start the recording and get things started then. Okay. So welcome to the Sprint 19 report. This sprint just ended on Monday. It was a record sprint in terms of pull requests, which you'll see in a few slides. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things, the statistics that I just mentioned. Greg Blomquist is going to talk about the providers. Alberto is going to talk about the status of the REST API. Dan's going to talk about the UI and IE18N specifically. Greg's going to talk about the service dialogs, Foreman, and orchestration. Jason's going to talk about event storms that he's addressed. Joe's going to talk about the appliance. Rich is going to talk about fleecing. And John Mark Walker is going to talk about the ManageIQ.org website and the community in general. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we had a record sprint. I don't really know why, but we got 181 pull requests merged. We typically get somewhere in the order of 100, 105. So this one was a record. 90 issues labeled as bugs were addressed, 58 as enhancements, and then the remaining ones were technical debt, refactoring, and tests. As of today, we have 78 open pull requests in the new sprint, in sprint 20, 25 of which are labeled as work in progress or WIP. So basically 50 are theoretically ready to be merged. So again, there's a very high probability that we'll get way past 100 again in this coming sprint 20. I think one of the reasons why we did go up in terms of number of pull requests merged is that over the last few weeks, a lot of people at Red Hat have been focused on fixing bugs one day a week, and I think that's kind of reflected here in this in the stats. Okay, next slide, please.
All right. Hey there. So I want to talk a little bit about what happened in the provider space this last sprint. We had a number of bug fixes come in. You have to excuse me. I'm kind of trying to work through a cold today. Also on the OpenStack infrastructure side, we had some work happen for getting host events to be captured. They're still working on getting a suitable environment up to actually start parsing events to understand how the content is different in host events from what it looks like on the cloud side. Once we get some of that figured out, we'll get a better demo put together, probably for next sprint. But that's been merged, that's in. And I want to hand it over to Alyssa, who's on the container management team. And she's going to talk about the Kubernetes inventory collection. She's got a short demo she wants to show. Over to Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
Cool. So I recorded yesterday a very short demo because I wasn't sure I'm able to attend because I have an overlapping meeting that starts soon. But this demo, let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Sure can.
Okay, great. Great. So short explanation of what are you about to see. I have a local Kubernetes cluster that's actually built from Kubernetes source code running on my laptop, and it consists of a master and a slave node for Kubernetes, where I set up just several entities just to show the capabilities. And what basically it's doing is quite similar to any other provider ManageIQ. It connects to the REST API of Kubernetes, parses the entities that are received in JSON format via the kube client gem, and it persists it in VMDB. There is no UI so far. This task, we started to plan and work on that. Erin Boyd is talking to Dan about that part. Other things that we're doing in that area are watches and events. That's work that Federico is developing, and hopefully it will be ready soon. We are also started to look at tests for the RSpec tests, what needs to be done in that area. And after talking to OpenShift, we realized we also need to collect an additional entity, which is named namespaces in Kubernetes, and they represent projects in OpenShift. So expect a PR, I hope sometime next week, that will add the collection of that entity as well to the provider. So far, we're collecting container groups, which are named pods in Kubernetes, and their port configs, container definitions, container running representations, and container services, which are logical load balancers. That's it.
Can we get the slides back? Alyssa. Yeah, as Alyssa pointed out, there's no UI yet on the Kubernetes side. That's still being figured out. It's a brand new provider type, so not just like adding a new cloud provider or infrastructure provider. We have to figure out exactly where that lands in the UI. So there's some ongoing effort there on that front, but it's really great. We're seeing some the traction on the Kubernetes and container side. I think it's really exciting to see that come in. What we're looking forward to for next time is we want to see the Kubernetes events work get merged in. Federico, also on the container management side, he's been working on an event catcher for Kubernetes. He's using Kubernetes watches to watch Kubernetes resources and then capture events off that. That pull request is in, it's under review. We're expecting it to come in this next sprint. And then I also want to get a Pluggable Providers update. Matthew Draper's been working on that, and I'm pretty excited where that's going. And that's it.
All right, Alberto.
Yep. All right, so for the REST API, first let's go over the PRs that were merged in this sprint. Some of these have been worked on last sprint, and some of them worked on this. So the tag management was done last sprint. So we have the primary collection of API tags that you can just now query available tags, as well as the assignment and unassignment of tags to the different resources, and they're listed here: VMs, providers, and the cluster. So that's in foundational work. We have support for virtual attributes. That was 1425. That was merged in. That's leveraged by tag management, where you can query the categorization of tags for more details on that. Also, we have a ID href fix. We had ID was being normalized as href in some of the queries, and that was just wrong. So we got that fixed here. That also bumped up the versioning to 2.0. So let's see. Policy management was worked on this sprint. So this guy got merged in, where we can query the conditions out of policies and policy profiles in 12. VM management, the custom attributes PR was merged in 1239. This is where you can query and add, edit, delete custom attributes off of VMs. Also, this sprint we added the lifecycle ability to add lifecycle events to VMs 1663. So that was merged in. So that's it for the stuff coming in. Next slide, please. Marianne, next slide, please. Okay, so the primary
It's
work
just slow.
the primary work for this sprint was policy management. So the ability to query policies and policy profiles as sub-collections, and again, this targets the different resources, VMs, templates, providers of the clusters. Also, you can query the policy actions of a particular policy using the URL you see here, API policy, the ID, and policy actions. Also, you can query them as a primary collection. Also, 1611, querying events out of policies using that URL there, as well as the management of policies and policy profiles. So you can assign and unassign to the different resources. And that's it for the new work. So again, once these guys, the policy ones are merged in, and there's 3 remaining VM management ones once those guys are merged in next sprint, we would have closed the gap with the SOAP API. So that's a big plus. So next sprint, again, we'll be merging that, and we have some additional fixes and enhancements coming in. So.
Yeah. And just to reiterate on the SOAP API, the spring release will be the last release that we'll have the SOAP API in, and that's why we brought the REST API up to parity. Once the spring release comes out, we will upgrade to Rails 4, for which there's very poor support for SOAP, and so we will not support SOAP going forward after that. Next slide. All right, over to Dan.
All right, I hope you guys can hear me. I just got kicked off Blue Jeans and came back in really quick.
Yep, we can hear you. Great.
All right, great. Okay, so we've been working on, actually almost completed the first phase of the I-18N internationalization project. All the strings and the views have been converted. There's a couple stragglers that are waiting on PRs, but for the most part, it's done. You can add and update the I-18N files with translations. So we're waiting for the first Klingon commit. Also, along the way, the reason it slowed down a little bit was we spent time converting all the views to HAML at the same time while we were finishing up the I-18N stuff. The other work that still needs to be done, it's been put on hold for a little while, probably be picked up after spring, is there's some remaining strings in other areas. The dictionary needs to be enabled with internationalization, and we also want to put a feature in where non-translated strings get marked in the UI, so they're obvious, and that way we can make sure they get changed faster. Next slide. All right, so after we got rid of the DHLMX outer layouts last sprint, we've done some work to clean up the styling because it affected a lot of things. So we've got the login screen has been converted to Bootstrap and PatternFly. A lot of the styling, as I said, has been cleaned up, and we converted the advanced search as well. We had the placeholder icons in for the stacks screen, so we can show you those. Got the first cut of the orchestration support in, so there's some read-only insight support for that. Got a couple screenshots of that, and we got actually the schedule editor, which is a more advanced editor, converted to Angular.js, a little collaborative project there to get that done. Next slide. So this is the new login screen. Oh, actually, Eric's going to talk through this stuff. You on, Eric?
Sure. Yeah, so over the last few sprints, we've been working on converting the various areas of the UI to PatternFly. You can think of PatternFly as a skinned version of Bootstrap that's designed for enterprise applications. During this sprint, we updated a number of the screens, beginning with the login screen that's now responsive. Next slide, please. The navigation bar header, the outer layouts have all been converted. Layouts in other areas of the UI that don't use DHTMLX, such as host and cluster, have also been converted to PatternFly. Next slide. Most of the non-DHTMLX accordions, as well as the search boxes, have been converted. The accordions will now drop down to the bottom of the screen, and the search box will adjust properly as the screen is resized. Next slide. The advanced search pop-up has been replaced with the PatternFly modal. In coming sprints, we'll be converting other pop-ups to modals. Next slide. The dashboard has been updated with PatternFly tabs, and the task buttons have moved over to the right. In future sprints, we'll be making the charts responsive and restyling the widgets. Next slide. So with the conversion to PatternFly, we're now able to offer UI customizations using less. Header navigation, login panel colors, and the mobile desktop breakpoint are now easily customizable. And there's the URL, the location of the less file. There's an annotated less file where we have those settings is at the top of the slide. In coming sprints, we'll be adding additional customizations as well as moving this functionality into UI settings under the config tab. So we expect to be resolving styling conflicts between PatternFly and our other CSS libraries over the next couple of sprints. So if you see anything odd, please let me know. And back to Dan.
Thanks, Eric. Next slide. All right, so just really quick, because last time we had the green, bright green placeholder images. So you can see there we've got stacks images, and down on the bottom right, the new parameters and outputs and resources that are popping into the product. More to come, obviously, on this. Next. All right, so now we have insight into orchestration, so we can actually see the objects that have been discovered during the cloud provider refresh. So here's like a list view showing the orchestration templates that we found. Those are probably CloudFormation templates. Next slide. Ooh, that's fast. Oh, okay, back up one. All right, there we go. So here's the detail where you can actually see the template and the script that's going to be applied when you use that template. Coming up, we should be able to have some management of these templates where you'll be able to edit and copy and create dialogues from templates. All right, and then the next slide is actual demo of the schedule editor that Aparna put together. It was a collaborative effort between Eric C. and Aparna, and let's let it play. He's got captions, so there's no need to really talk about it. Oops, what happened? You said that worked.
Control-click, right.
There it goes. Maybe full screen it.
12-1. It's already pretty good.
I can talk a little bit. I mean, you can see the red showing you what you kind of have to do and what you haven't filled in. So the same as we showed last time.
Dan, what was the editor that you guys showed last time, a sprint or two ago?
We showed the repository editor, a very simple one, only had a couple fields.
Right. Okay. So this is the second editor being converted to Angular, right?
Yes.
Cool.
But you can see it's a lot more complex, a lot of drop-downs that interact with each other. So the dynamic downloading of the drop-downs, when we need to, we will go to the server to get different lists as things change. So, but that's only as needed. So there's very few interactions with the server. Most of this is done locally.
So for the end user, this means what? Faster UI, more responsive UI?
Faster UI, more responsive server as well, because we're doing less transactions to the server.
Cool.
We're going to be working on getting all of our editors eventually converted to this. So none of this is requiring any server interaction. There you go.
Yeah, so in terms of code, This requires fewer variables in the session object, is that right?
Actually, no session object, no variables in the session object. So yeah, it helps with memory, helps with less transactions, and helps with responsiveness on the client side.
Cool.
So that's it for the UI side.
Thanks, Dan.
All right. Yep. So for the sprint, we're continuing to convert the service dialog fields over to be dynamic. So in this one, the checkbox is in there. It's pretty simple. It's still a checkbox, but basically required field, true, false value. Setup is just like the other fields where you point out an automate instance that will provide the values back to the control. And then, as we've kind of been discussing, and is one of the, I think, talk topics that was started was trying to make the dialog fields more dynamic. If you're used to the provisioning dialogs, changing one field can cause other fields to adjust. We want to get that kind of notification working between the fields and the dialog. So Eric put together a Git issue for that after kind of discussing some design stuff. And so we want to start working on getting that feature into the product. Next, actually, I should say, so there's a PR in for the date control being dynamic, and you can still go to the next one, and then date time is right behind that, so those should be in. For the Foreman side, we got the provider inventory refresh merged in this sprint, and then a lot of back-end work to enable. We're trying to get to provisioning, obviously, but reporting tagging is in, the service automate models we need, assigning it to a zone, and we've had a number of discussions around provisioning, dialogue, state machines, workflows, starting to pull all that stuff together to get the provisioning workflow in place. So that work is happening in this sprint.
And what about the Foreman UI? Is that something you or Dan can talk about in progress, or?
Dan, can you speak to that? I mean, there's been design work. I believe it's in progress.
Well, we're starting at this sprint.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I'd say there's been some other work around the workers here. That stuff has not been there's no PR for that at the moment, but effort has been made that in that area where these are new types of providers. If you want to call it that, it's not the traditional EMS, so the provider structure is a little bit different. So the worker setup is, changing because of that. So, cool. All right, next slide. And then, so for orchestration, same kind of thing as the UI is getting stuff in place. We've been doing a lot more of the back end components. So. From the template that Dan showed, we have the ability to create dialogues that can be used to create a catalog item. So once we get that catalog item UI in place, the model and the background's set up to support it, reporting, tagging, service models have all been put into place. And then on the fog project, we had a PR merged with the orchestration stuff, which will allow us to consume heat metadata to do the same type of processing we're doing for AWS today. So that's
we're waiting on them to be released with the full customers.
Yep. That's the next step for that. And again, ongoing is the work for the provisioning side, refining that work, and that's happening in this sprint. Cool. All right, next.
Okay. Yeah, I got a big slide. That's it.
That's a beauty.
So a ticket had come in a while ago from Red Hat Bugzilla, where out in the field, when event storms occur, a good majority of the time those events are event EX events, which are sort of like a catch-all bucket of events in VMware. And most of the time, most people don't care about those events. So right for now, we've disabled it by default. It can always be turned back on if a customer needs it or if a user needs it. But turning it off hopefully will help prevent the whole ManageIQ system from gumming up when we get event storms. a good majority of them are these events. Later in the future, we've talked about doing more of a throttling on the event side. So we may be able to re-enable it in the future, but for now, to prevent it from bringing down the system, we're disabling it. That's it.
Okay.
Next slide.
So this sprint, there were a few interesting bugs that were fixed. One of them was a log collection regression with FTP, and so that was fixed in 2 different PRs. Another interesting one was we had an issue where lots of CPU was being used, and it looked like the symptoms were that workers were continually restarting, and it was because the provider those workers were communicating with were either unreachable or we had a bad password. So now we fixed this to check this before we actually spawn the workers, so we don't have that issue. And so as soon as the provider is available and reachable, we can start those workers. Then finally, we had some issues with a new release of Bundler that went from a process model to threads for doing concurrent gem installs. And apparently there's some code that's not thread safe, and we're still trying to track that down. So for now, we're building our appliances for nightly using without the concurrency by disabling the concurrent jobs. So we're continuing to track down why where in the code is the thread unsafety, but that's basically it.
To be clear, it's either Bundler or Ruby Gems has the bug, not us.
Yes, yeah, Bundler or Ruby Gems, and I think Aaron detected a few different places that might be causing it, but we're still looking into it.
Joe, is there any update on IPv6 at all?
So this sprint, we spent a little time setting up environments to test IPv6, so we were testing provisioning, and I think we had some success, but we're still more testing. We're trying different environments with IPv6.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. In this sprint, we discovered and fixed a bug that was causing fleecing to time out pretty much globally for any type of fleecing job, which was not around for a long time. I think it was only around for a week or so, but it just happened that it was blocking a few efforts that are listed below. The first one was trying to reconstitute a new development test environment for fleecing, where that was fairly successful up to a point. All the fleecing jobs would time out, so it was useless, and it was not clear, if the cause was a bad appliance or if it was another bug. In other environments where other people were looking at fleecing bugs had the same issue, but it would only manifest itself as a timeout, so it wasn't clear that it was indeed the same cause. So we found that and fixed that, and luckily it was a common problem, so that pretty much unblocked everyone going forward. So as I mentioned, the new dev and test appliance setup is complete. I've re-scripted that, and I'll document that as well. This new environment is based on upstream builds, so we can make that public, and we plan on releasing those instructions and scripts to the community, make it available to the community. Initially, what I have now is pretty much Mac-based Fusion appliance and code sharing there, but we can also do the same thing for Linux and Fedora. We'll look into that as well. In addition, we're continuing to work on fleecing tests. As I mentioned, I think in the last sprint, we're starting to define a repository where we internally can keep images that our tests can run against initially, and then record those in camcorder cassettes to run automated tests in Travis. There's a talk discussion surrounding the format of that, and Mo has been continuing to implement that. He's implementing scripts to maintain that and to set tags associated with images and to back it up and restore it as well. Depending on how generic those scripts are, we may make those available publicly as well. And we continue to add new tests. We have some outstanding pull requests for additional fleecing tests that have yet to be reviewed and merged, and we'll do that now that some of the other issues we've been struggling with have been resolved. That's it.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. Over to John Mark. John Mark, if you're talking, you're on mute.
John Mark?
John Mark.
John Mark, you there?
Hi, can anybody hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Success. All right. Thanks for having me along. I'm glad that we've integrated the community process into the overall developer sprint process. I think it'll yield some great results. One link that I failed to put on this slide is the link to the public Trello board where we're doing all this stuff in the community. I'll make sure to add that to the slide before the final gets published. But a lot of the things we're working on now have around the depot. If you have not seen the extensions depot, it's just designed to be a central repository where everyone's sort of custom modifications, policies, state machines are uploaded and downloaded at that URL where you see. We've identified a developer to work with to produce the next version of the ManageIQ depot, and this will be based on code called Supermarket, which they developed for the Chef community, which you can find at supermarket.chef.io. So take a look at that. We'll have something based on that. We've also started the process for redesigning the website. I have an initial wireframe, which I have a link to a ping posted here in the report. We've just started, but we're looking for community feedback, and I'll be soliciting feedback in various quarters on the new design. We'll work on the front page first, and then we'll work on the other pages afterwards. In partner news, Booz Allen released version 2 of their Jellyfish Cloud Broker. That's at projectjellyfish.org. That's using ManageIQ in the back end. I don't think this is the one that removes Drupal. If some of you who are familiar with this know that they're using Drupal to create a shopping cart that utilized the ManageIQ API and some sort of JSON query. But it's the next version, and they're going to be working on another version in the middle of the year. We have a staging site now for what I'm calling a Planet ManageIQ. This is where we syndicate a bunch of RSS feeds from related blogs. So we have blogs from Brian Shea, the ManageIQ.org blog. We have a Tenderloves blog, and a couple others we've added in there. Take a look. Let us know what you think. If you know of any other feeds that should be added, let us know. We're looking to plan the next design summit. It will be an online design summit. We're looking at the end of this release cycle after the Botvinnik release cycle. So we're looking at late April, early May. More info on that in the next sprint. We'll have some dates to throw around then. And I just created a public calendar for ManageIQ events, including this every 3 weeks sprint report, so that we can send those around in an ICS form so that everyone can integrate in their calendar and be publicly available. And those are the high points.
Excellent. Thank you, John Mark. So it looks like we're making progress on all fronts. Sprint 20 has begun. We're probably about 2 sprints away from making a stable branch, the Botvinnik branch. 2, maybe 2.5 sprints, something like that. And with that, I'd like to open it up for questions, if anybody has any that the team can answer here. All right. It's a quiet audience out there. Okay, so if there are no questions, I want to thank everyone for their hard work in getting so much done the last few weeks here, and looking forward to more great work from everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.